míle a gwyf as tacht agus gymor wŵr tam i fwy chymwyn ag sagart masi agus taher lenan yn siarad wysiana hyn egin agus yn y sagart ele a fi celwr an affrin yn siarad maen. In English, I will just say that you are all very welcome here today, and it's a sad day, of course, no doubt about it. We have lived through a fair bit of this sadness over the past few months, but you know, we know where she is today. Father Massey, in his beautiful words, kind of, I suppose, compared her to her great leader, Nano Nagel. There was one thing that I suppose kind of struck me in what he said that I didn't know before, was that her father was loaded. Loaded, as he said. I know what he meant, and you know what he meant. Anne's father, and my father, wasn't loaded in that respect, but he was loaded with a great load of faith, and that is where Anne is today. And that's the reason why. Because in our house in Lispole, when we were 8 and she was 8 and I was 9, my mother died. And it was a very different world in the austere times of the 1950s. Very few people were loaded in that sense. But my father was. He handed it down to us, and we got it also from the people around us. When we went to school, that faith was handed down to us. We saw it enacted in our community. We saw it enacted at home. I have here, which was given to me by the dear sisters, it is just a copy of what she wrote herself for the archives of the convent. It's a short kind of an account of her life. I won't even read it all, there's a couple of pages, but one of the things that I have marked here in it is that she said, family life was simple. We said the rosary every night, and we had a very happy childhood. That is true. We had nothing. But everybody else had nothing. So we didn't have to compare with anybody else. But just a few words about Anne that people would know about her in adult life. She was a very funny girl. I have learned in the past couple of days when people came up to talk to me in the convent that they described her in so many different ways. I wish I had jotted down some of them, and some of them I couldn't repeat here today. I can tell you that. But she was described as a very nice rogue. Is there such a thing? She was described as a great crack, and all kinds of things like that. What's that, Father? I won't repeat that. So, That's where we got our faith. But there was, it wasn't all bleak. The 50s were bleak. But it wasn't bleak in people's hearts, because that's what they knew. And even to make, Anne would enjoy this. The rosary was said every night, as she says here, most nights anyway, and invariably there was the two of us as young kids. We didn't really realize the significance of it, of course, the full significance, until later on. But there was a funny side to it, and that was often when we knelt down around the fire to say the rosary, we had the beads, but we also had a cat. And now I hear people laughing because they can remember something similar happened. The cat would come in, see the beads dangling, and as cats do, he started playing with the beads. And of course, then all hell broke loose, saying the rosary. But it didn't end there, because in a lot of houses there was what was called, and still is, wainscoting. It's around the church here. A little space between the ceilings and the wall, into which the mice would come, free from the cat. And of course, when the cat heard the mice scratching in the ceiling, he left the beads and went over to the wainscoting. Sometimes the rosary never ended, as it was meant to end. But I know that God knew what we meant. Father Massey said almost everything else that I want to say. She gave a history of where we all went. We grew up. We grew up after our mother died, and that the day of her funeral, I was reminded of it here today. I remember it so well. When we came home after the funeral, there was no such thing as meals or anything else, just like there unfortunately isn't today with COVID. But we came in, shut the door, and had a cup of tea. Or something. Can't remember, I suppose it was tea. Definitely wasn't coffee anyway. But what can you say on a day like that? What can you say on a day like today? But the thing that I do remember is my father going down into the room. The room, as it was called, you all know what it was. And he brought up a picture of Our Lady of Perpetual Succour. And I see it over there on the right-hand side. It was a very common, and still is, a very common icon. And he brought that up, and he put it on the kitchen table, leaning up against the jug. And he said, "Today, your mother is gone. Now, that's you, Mother." That was a difficult time. We didn't really realize the significance of it at the time. But I do today, and I did all my life. I don't think I will go on any further, except to extend our deepest thanks to the sisters. Just one thing that I would like to say. When Anne and Father Massey mentioned Anne's transition from the convent in Dingle, from a student, and when she decided to join, the Presentation Order. At that time, I was in the training college in Dublin myself, and my father was left alone. And very often people said to me, you know, it'll be very hard on you now. Your mother is dead, and your only sister is joining, which was then, for everyone, it really was an enclosed order. Since, of course, it is opened up and it's great. Access to her was a few times a year. There were no phone calls. But we did visit her while that system existed. But people used to say that to me. You know, it's very hard on you now. But I didn't realize it at the time. But on that day, and I've said this to the sisters, I gained many sisters on that day. And I have them ever since. Gurmil Mahagavi.